All right, this is Dan again, your pain-free coach. This video is really the proof video where I'm going to provide you a whole bunch of information from a medical perspective as to why the last video where I explained the pathway to pain, why that's really what's going on. And I may not have mentioned it previously, but I am not a doctor. I don't play one on television. I am not a chiropractor. I'm not a physical therapist. I don't do anything from a pure medical standpoint. I'm truly a coach. I'm a guy who has learned about this mind-body cause for back pain and most pains, migraines, fibromyalgia, any type of pain. I've learned about it. I've experienced it. I've figured out how to get myself out of pain. I've studied basically everything there is surrounding this mind-body pain disorder. And I've even worked with and studied with one of the leading experts, Adam Heller, who created Zero Pain Now, and that's the program in which I am a practitioner of. So what I really want to do is give you the proof. So bear with me. The first thing I will tell you is that there is nothing wrong with your back, mind, migraines, fibromyalgia. There's nothing wrong with your body, is what I'm here to tell you. Look, I talked about in the last video all of these unbearable repressed emotions, and there's a lot of sources for these emotions, whether it be work, your job, profession, your extended family, your immediate family, spouses, parents. How about financial troubles or family matters, fighting among siblings, or your aunt did this and whatever, a lot of family matters. How about aging? I know a lot of people, as they start to get older, that's infuriating to a lot of people. Like, they don't like that. Mortality is a huge issue. How about illness? How about somebody that you know getting sick, or yourself getting sick and not being well? Political things, all sorts of reasons for emotions. And it could be as simple as, traffic going to and from work. So this pathway to pain creates a whole bunch of medically named symptoms. So most low back and leg pain, sciatica, is caused by this. Most upper back pain, neck pain, shoulder pain, arm pain even. Even the whiplash syndrome is somewhat caused by this. If you're fine afterwards and you start to hurt 3 days later, it's because you think you're supposed to hurt and all of a sudden you do. And people are in pain 20 years after a car accident. One thing I will point out is the body heals. If you're in pain for longer than 6 to 8 weeks after a physical trauma, something else is going on. Your fear and focus on that pain and that trauma has locked it in. You've now created this loop within your nervous system. Also, tendinitis, ankle, knee, elbow, shoulder, those things, very common. So there's a ton of different symptoms that are all caused by what I just explained in that last video, that whole pathway to pain. So now let's talk about who gets this. There are definitely certain personality types that are very prone to this repression and thereby the manifestation of that, which is pain of some type. So a couple of personality types. A perfectionist. So a perfectionist is very prone to get this because as a perfect person, you don't want to admit that you're angry. Well, I can't get angry. I'm perfect. I'm not allowed to get angry. So you repress it. How about do-gooders? Are you the type of person who always puts other people first and really doesn't take care of yourself and your own needs? And that's a wonderful trait to have. I mean, to do good for your family or your spouse or your kids or your parents, your aging parents, whatever it may be. There's nothing wrong with that. But here's what I'll tell you. We all have this inner child. You've heard that term in the psychological worlds. The inner child is walking around stomping their feet, pissed off because they don't get to do what they want. And they're told to shut up. That's called repression. That's basically you saying, I can't deal with these emotions. They're not socially acceptable. They're not acceptable to my own self-esteem. Therefore, we do what? We swallow them. We push them down, and they start to cause trouble. So some more personality types. Compulsive. How about people pleasers, right? More like the do-gooders. Spiritual and religious people oftentimes get these pain disorders because when it comes to these unbearable emotions, many religious people think, I'm a person of God and I don't get angry. So we swallow those emotions. We don't express them. We don't deal with them. We don't even recognize them because it's not in line with our self-esteem to have these emotions. So we squash them. How about people who are sensitive to criticism? Is that you? Are you dependable, overscheduled, or overwhelmed? And how about controlling, where you feel like you have to have control over everything? And the lack of control is infuriating to a controlling person. So maybe you've got one of these, two of these, three of these, five of these, all of these personality traits. Just means you're very likely to have this pain disorder thing that I told you about before. So now let's get into the real medical proof. And this is fascinating stuff, and it really hits home here. So, New England Journal of Medicine in 1994, they did MRIs on 98 people with no history of back pain. All right, so 98 people have never had any back pain. Only 34% of them had normal discs. 66, or 2/3 of those people, actually had bulging discs at one or more levels, or disc protrusions or extrusions. So what does that mean? It means 2/3 of the walking population who's never had pain has disc abnormalities, bulging or herniations. Think about it. If that's the case, how can you be so sure that your bulging disc is causing your pain when 2/3 of the people walking around with no pain have the same type of physical abnormality? Bulging discs, guess what? It's a normal sign of aging. It happens. Our bodies get jacked up over the years. So that's one. Now they redid that study, the Hoag Hospital and Cleveland Clinic, 1994, also published in the New England Journal of Medicine, one of the most reputable journals. People who have never had back pain, this is a separate study completely, 64 of 98, almost identical numbers. 64 of 98 reported having lumbar disc bulges and protrusions on their MRI. And again, these are people who've never had back pain. 2/3 of the people out there have these structural problems. Now, this was really interesting. So if you've ever gone for an x-ray and they say, oh, you've got arthritis of the spine, osteoarthritis. The Hassad Hospital in Jerusalem, 1976, there is no difference in the incidence of low back pain in people with or without osteoarthritis of the spine. What that means is if they took a whole bunch of people and said these people have osteoarthritis and these people don't, there's no difference in who's going to get back pain. Some people with osteoarthritis have no pain at all. Some people without osteoarthritis do have pain. It doesn't correlate. Again, that's fascinating. They did 109 CT CAT scans showing patients with herniated discs 1 to 3 years after a linguistic treatment, meaning talking to them, coaching them. 1 to 3 years after just that process, 96 were pain-free, 11 were mostly better, and only 2 were unchanged. So here we have 109 people with herniated discs. And what is that? 107 out of 109 are either completely out of pain or mostly better after a linguistic, meaning speaking, treatment protocol. Okay, that says a lot. Only 2 were unchanged. Okay, so now they did a study, the University of Copenhagen did a study comparing x-rays of 238 patients suffering low back pain with 66 people with no history of back pain. So on the x-rays, they reported no structural difference here. Bottom line is, if you were to give the radiologist who's looking at these x-rays 2 stacks, one with 238 x-rays, people with back pain, and 66 people with no history of back pain, and ask the radiologist to tell you which stack has the pain. The radiologist would look at it and say, I don't know, I can't tell the difference. Why? Because they're virtually identical. Structure does not cause pain. Almost never. Almost never. I'm not saying if you get in a car accident, you can't be hurt. You absolutely can, and that's a real trauma. But again, the body heals. Okay. So, a neurosurgeon, Dr. H.C. Razumov, found disc herniations were responsible for pain in less than 3% of the cases. And this guy is a neurosurgeon who does back surgeries. Only 3% caused back pain. Now, I talked to you before in the Pathway to Pain video about this oxygen deprivation. So where's the proof? Okay, in 1975, 2 German investigators found evidence of mild oxygen deprivation in the nuclei of muscle cells of patients with back pain. In 1985, that research was duplicated by Swedish doctors as well. Fascinating stuff. It's all here if you care to look for it. One of the other things is back pain is very much in vogue today, meaning anytime somebody hurts their back and they get the MRI and all of a sudden they look online, that's another thing. Looking online will convince you you've got every possible problem that you read about. So that's also an authority telling you you're broken, and it just locks in the pain really well. But what's interesting is through no physical change, no change in our physiology, from 1989 to 1994, the incidence of carpal tunnel syndrome, repetitive strain disorder, carpal tunnel, went up 467% in a 5-year span. So why does that happen? It's because it became in vogue. That was the new diagnosis. And this pathway to pain that I talked about in the last video has a tendency to create pain where the brain thinks it should. So these days it's the back, or migraines, or fibromyalgia. So I've shared a lot of proof with you. And here's really the highway to healing. We showed you the pathway to pain, but how do you get out of it? First thing you got to do is recognize your body isn't broken. Your body is not the cause. So you have to renounce any type of structural diagnosis. Basically say, wow, I'm not broken. I'm okay. Right? And then acknowledge that the real cause is psychological. Again, you are not crazy. It is not imagined. But as I showed you in that last video, that psychophysical activity, not unlike blushing, causes the change to the autonomic nervous system, which reduces the blood flow, which reduces oxygen, which causes pain. It's a very real physical process, but it is psychological in origin. So how do we deal with this problem? We stop repressing. We focus on the emotions. So how do you do that? It means be aware of it. Wow, that really felt bad. Allow that emotion to sit with you. Feel it. Don't just push it down into your stomach or into your gut and swallow it and go on your day, because that builds up and it causes this problem we just talked about. So focus on your emotions. Be aware of them. It doesn't mean you have to be a raving lunatic, but just be aware of the fact that, boy, that really pissed me off. Or, boy, I'm really upset about that. Or, I'm so sad. Whatever it may be, acknowledge it. Feel the emotion and then let it go. How do you let it go? There's typically a lesson to be learned in most major emotional experiences. So look for that lesson. Once you get the lesson, it's easier to let it go. The lesson may be, hey, my boss is a jerk. Has nothing to do with me. He's having a bad day, right? Easier to let the emotion go when you find the lesson. So pay attention to that. So renounce the structural diagnosis, acknowledge the real cause is psychological in origin, focus on your emotions, and then commence regular activity. That means you can get back moving again. All right, and that has some pitfalls. And we'll get to that in a minute. But what you don't have to do is change your personality. You don't have to change your lifestyle. You don't have to feel your emotion. You don't even have to express your emotion. You just have to acknowledge it, that it's there. Okay? I do want to talk to you briefly, because some people are like, well, this sounds like a placebo type of thing, mind over matter type of stuff. And it's really not. Again, we're dealing with the true cause of the pain. So let's talk about a placebo. A placebo is basically a useless treatment that helps or cures, kind of like the sugar pill that helped people get better from being sick. It's based on blind faith, and it's almost always temporary. But why does it work? Because of our belief system. If we believe we're being given medicine that cures a disease, oftentimes our body says, wow, let's go after this disease, right? That's what a placebo is. This approach to this pathway to pain is not a placebo. It's really dealing with the true cause. Now, on the other hand, what you don't hear as much is something called a nocebo. Well, what is that? It's the opposite of a placebo. And a nocebo is an idea, often an unconscious one, that something is bad for you, such as bending, lifting, running, sleeping on a hard mattress. And therefore, those things that are nocebos are basically triggering symptoms, because you feel like, wow, if I go out and I cut the lawn, or if I rake the lawn, or shovel snow, you have this nocebo. It's a belief that it's bad for you. Exercise, sleeping funny on a mattress, wherever, on a different mattress other than your own. Oftentimes those will trigger symptoms because we believe things are bad for us. And oh, by the way, if your doctor says you're broken, you're going to be in pain for the rest of your life, and you're going to need to learn to live with that, that's a nocebo in the biggest way possible. It's now this belief that your discs are herniated or bulging or something, and you're broken. Now you believe that you're going to be in pain forever, and guess what? If you buy into that belief, you very well may be. The good news is there's an answer. So there's Pavlovian conditioning, where sitting or standing could hurt, walking, sports or exercise, you get pain in the daytime or nighttime. Sometimes it switches up. But what's really funny is some people with a disc bulge at a certain location hurt when they walk, but they can run. Or they can, the opposite of that. So if they hurt when they run and other people hurt when they walk, how can those two things be the same? How can two people experience that same bulging disc in different ways? It's because we're conditioned, or we have triggers to pain. So exercise, sports, lifting, those types of things. So I want to wrap this up with a few other points. There's some back myths that the back is easily injured. It's really not. It's one of the most encapsulated parts of our bodies. It's surrounded by muscles and tendons and bones. The back is not easily injured. Bending is bad for the back. Running is bad for the back. Strong muscles, strong stomach muscles, prevent back pain. Well, that's not true. There's weightlifters who are ripped. They have back pain all the time. Weak back muscles cause back pain. It's a myth. It's a myth. That's not true. I'm out of pain 5 years, and while I'm not in bad shape, I don't exercise. I don't do core exercises. I don't do crunches. So my back muscles are no stronger than the average Joe. They're probably fairly weak. I'm not very flexible. I don't stretch, but I've got no pain going on. So there's several back pain myths. So what's really proof of recovery? Let's say you follow through with this process and program. To me, proof of recovery is little to no pain, no more fear. Fear is a difficult thing to deal with. And like I said, the fear of the pain can actually keep that loop going and keep you in pain. So no more fear, little to no pain. No physical treatments, meaning you're not going to the chiropractor 3 days a week or however, 3 days a month or whatever it may be. No physical treatments for pain because there's nothing physically wrong with you. And there's no physical limitations. So once I beat my back pain, I got back on the golf course. I did some rock climbing in an indoor rock climbing gym. I ran some 5Ks, got back to lifting some weights, on a limited basis, but I did that. I can basically do whatever I want physically with no restrictions. So in summary, I will point out pain is not a structural abnormality. The main reason for pain is this mild oxygen deprivation. And DPS, diversion pain syndrome, is a harmless condition caused by repressed emotions, and it exists only to divert your attention from your repressed emotions to something like pain. So your back is basically normal. There's nothing left to fear. Physical activity is not dangerous and must be resumed for better health. So really, to wrap this up, becoming pain-free is shifting your attention from your physical pain to your emotional issues. That means when you hurt, you don't focus on it. You don't fret about it. You don't complain about it. You don't wallow in it. You immediately shift your attention to what's going on emotionally. What am I feeling right now? Well, in some cases, it's anger and frustration over the pain. In other cases, it's a whole bunch of other emotional stuff going on that has you tied up emotionally. So at the end of the day, the goal is to really think psychological and not physical. That's our proof video. There's a lot of medical stuff there. There's a lot of explanation. I hope what you're finding is that this stuff makes sense. I know when I first heard about this, part of me was saying, yeah, no, that can't be true. But then when you really dig into it and watch this video over and over again and think about these studies, think about these medical facts and journals and studies that were done and see how it relates to you, see what you've been told by your doctors about your pain and the lack of success in all of the physical treatments that are trying to fix the physical problem. And if it was truly a physical problem, you'd be out of pain by now because you've done everything necessary and everything the doctors told you to do physically to fix the problem. But it hasn't worked because you haven't addressed the true cause. The true cause is diversion pain syndrome, and it's based on that pathway to pain. It's that mild oxygen deprivation. So give it some thought. Watch this video over and over again. In the next video, I'm going to give you a little bit more proof. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my story, share that with you, and also share with you a couple of testimonials of clients that have gotten pain-free as a result of this Zero Pain Now process. So I'll see you in the next video. Thanks very much.